and I'm grateful for Pastor John for inviting me. And as always, in conferences, I'm the only one with the funny accent, right? So I'll try to do my best to speak slow and make my message very clear, although it won't be easy. And the message for tonight, as you will see in a minute, if this is working, is about how should I say that? Whenever I come here to America and I listen to these pastors speaking and I see the warm support that we have in this land toward the land of Israel, it always gives me lots of comfort. And it's hard to believe how much support we have. The only problem is that my people don't know that. And this is kind of a tragedy. Because when the average Israeli is opening the TV and he tries to figure out what the world thinks about the Israeli-Palestinian issue, problems, huh? Yeah, I figured that out. We need to turn everything off and start it again. Okay. All right. Okay, so as I was saying, when the average Israeli is, thank you, trying to figure out what is going on and how the world feels toward Israel, all we know, is that okay? Yeah, we're okay. All we know is what we hear in the media. And you need to understand that nobody in the Israeli TV is broadcasting these conferences. And you need to understand that we are facing some very tough decisions in my country, and we are standing at a crossroad, and these decisions are based, among other things, on what we think is the world thinks about what's going on. And unless we know that we have so much support in this country, and we have the impression that everybody is against us, and sometimes it looks like we may be wrong, but that's our impression. So this is a real challenge to show support to the country in a way that we will see that as well. I don't know how to do that exactly, but you need to understand that one of the most devastating things that can happen to a nation, any nation, is to believe that they are all isolated, that nobody is with them, especially when this is not the case. But that's how we feel over there. So I hope that nobody is upset for me saying that. Let us begin with the topic for tonight. And I can give you the bottom line already, which is very easy, because everything you'll hear today is not going to work. It's not going to happen. However, the fact that people are dealing with the issue and people are desperate to find some kind of a peace solution shows you the desire of people in the region for peace and shows you the real desperate situation that we are in. We are so desperate in that we are willing to make painful concessions more than ever before in order to stop the killing in the region. I'm going to talk to you tonight in a way bringing in the Israeli perspective. For some of you, it will be not easy to understand. It's very hard to live in this country and to try to understand what are we feeling when we live over there, and we have that as a daily problem, as a daily confrontation. I know that everybody has an opinion, and of course the Bible tells us how this is going to end. Unfortunately, in Israel, not everybody is a Bible believer, so to speak, and people really want to see the end of it. And we're really desperate for that. So I'm going to speak about what people in my country think about that. And this is not a coincidence that Pastor John asked me to speak about that, although it's an unofficial document. Nobody signed an agreement. And that's why the topic is not the Geneva Agreement, these are the Geneva Understandings. Because nobody is committed to follow these understandings, because nobody was representing officially any party which is involved in the conflict. Several people got together, some officials from the Palestinian side, some Israeli former members of the Knesset, ministers, other political figures, and they tried to negotiate to find a solution, just to kind of set a mindset, to see if it's at all doable. And why was there a reason to do that? Well, because what we had so far failed, totally. To remind you that 11 years ago, September 13 of 1993, the two parties shook hands. Prime Minister Yitzhak Rabin and Yasser Arafat shook hands. And that was supposed to end over a century of hostility, over a century of bloodshed. The bottom line was simple. We are going to leave all the hatreds behind, and we are going to open a new era. Whatever happened, belongs to the past. We want to see if the two people can coexist, if the two people can live in peace. And this is not a time to give you the history of this conflict. We're only here to focus on something very specific. And these accords were supposed to be the beginning of a new chapter. It didn't work because of one main reason. And I can tell you that even without being biased. Because one party involved in the conflict had no intention whatsoever to keep anything that they've signed. But at first, we didn't know that. At first, we wanted to see if that's doable. The Oslo Accords had failed, among other reasons, because they tried to create an impossible situation. The bottom line was this: let's bring in the light issues. Let's speak about what we can agree upon and leave the tough issues to the end. That means if we can try to live in peace and we can create an atmosphere of coexistence, then by the time, when the time will come to bring in the tough issues, we had lived in peace for several years. And we will spoke about refugees, nobody spoke about borders. Nobody even mentioned how much land the Palestinians are going to get in the end of the process. That was the whole idea. Naturally, it created high expectations on both sides. In the Israeli side, the terror will cease overnight. Because now we have a partner, and if Arafat wants to stop his own people from coming after us, he's capable and he's willing. He'll do that. How wrong we were. Now we know, but not 11 years ago. From the Palestinian side, they believed that these accords will pave a road for prosperity overnight. Life will be good. It didn't happen. And because of this vagueness, and because of the expectations that both parties had, and nobody could deliver, by the way, the whole thing collapsed. But it collapsed primarily because one party, the Palestinians, were positive that by introducing terror and pressuring more, they can get more than they were supposed to get by signing the agreement. And everything came to a climax in a conference here in Washington, and that was in July of 2000 when Barak, Israeli Prime Minister, and Arafat met, and we made a very generous offer. Not enough time to speak about it. No Israeli Prime Minister will make a more generous offer. 100% of the territory, so to speak, was supposed to be given to the Palestinians. A Jewish Prime Minister, for goodness sake, is willing to give all Jerusalem, including Temple Mount, to the Palestinians. That is the maximum anybody can offer from my side. Not enough. It was turned down. And turning this down, whatever was the reasons, started a wave of riot that we hopefully see the end of it coming in the near future, not because of a peaceful solution, but because of the military developments in the area, but this is not a topic today. So the whole thing actually started here. As you can see, I'm using the screens on both sides, and I hope that you can see that, and the fonts are big enough to understand it. So what led? One thing led to the other. And since every party accused the other one for violating the agreement, it created such a distrust that the bottom line today is that we say we don't have a partner on the other side. And the Palestinians are saying we don't have a partner on the Israeli side. Somebody thought maybe he's in a position to try to challenge that statement and to see, do we have anything to talk about? That was the whole idea behind these understandings. Officials and non-officials from both sides got together for 2 years, by the way. They started before September of 2001. This was right after the riots had started. And 2 years later, officially, it was introduced. But again, it made a lot of waves because people said, hey, there is an understanding, it can work. Why the Israelis are turning down the Geneva agreements or understandings? By the way, the Palestinians did as well. Main reason, it's not an official document. It was undermining the authority of the Israeli government to make decisions, to create an atmosphere, in a way, behind their back. But the side or the scene was ready to introduce something that is very popular, how interesting, around the world, not necessarily in the Middle East. So let's go and get deeper and dig deeper into the various things. Well, some other plans, of course, are on the table. This one is very well known, and Bill spoke about it yesterday. This is the official plan on the table. The roadmap. For the first time ever, the American administration is not advising, helping, facilitating, it's dictating a solution. It never happened before. America said many times, if you need us, guys, we are there to help. Every agreement that you will reach is acceptable on us if you both agree. For the first time ever, Basically, what President Bush was saying, that's the plan. You want to take it or reject it. In other words, you are with us or against us. And both parties, quite kind of shaken from this new attitude, says, fine, we'll take it. We'll take it. But nobody has any intention to really implement it. It's kind of, let's keep things quiet. Because the precondition to the whole process is the Palestinians should dismantle and confront the Palestinian terror groups. They cannot, they will not, they're not capable, they don't want to. They leave it at that. And therefore, we are not committed to keep our side. How comfortable? Because in the political situation in Israel today, if the Palestinians had made the first move and we were supposed to deliver, in the political situation in Israel right now, in the cabinet, impossible. Today we cannot keep our part of the agreement. Fortunately, they didn't, so nobody is accusing us for sabotaging or jeopardizing the whole process. Speaking about the roadmap, and there was another one, the Saudi plan, that was officially now, is the plan of the Arab League. These are the two, and basically, all of them say the same. It's land for peace. Yesterday we spoke about dividing the land. That's the bottom line of every agreement that anybody speaks about. This is, for example, the Clinton plan from about 4 years ago. You see basically that there's one area, it says Palestine over there, another area, and a corridor connecting the two. What are the areas on the table then? This is the West Bank. Judea, Samaria, the West Bank of what? The River Jordan. When you say the West Bank, you refer to the piece of property which is west to the River Jordan, which is here, flowing from the Sea of Galilee down to the Dead Sea. So the West Bank is one, Judea and Samaria, and the other one is the Gaza Strip. More or less, when you speak about land for peace, that's the area that you are talking about. 2,500 square miles, that's the whole story. And this is actually what is on the negotiation table right now. How much of it? What kind of format? What can we agree upon? So plans are so many. But what does plan do if there's no will behind that? If the people are not willing, or the parties are not really into it, or not capable? These plans are excellent. But so far, they didn't produce much. And let's try to go deeper into it. It's all based on Resolution 242, which, by the way, speaks about the right of countries to exist in the Middle East. Since when were the Palestinians a country, a nation? Never. A tiny word, which is not mentioned in the resolution, that everybody seems to forget. Now suddenly we speak about them as a national entity, something they have never been before. But everything is based on Resolution 242 and 338. I'm sorry for touching my ear. Nothing wrong with my ear, by the way, just trying to put the microphone on. Well, the idea was to try to locate a potential partner. If we say we don't have a partner on the other side, and that's what they say, the Geneva agreements are challenging that, saying, listen, there are people on the other side that really want to see the end of the conflict. Let's find them, let's give them the authority, and let's create a new foundation, so to speak, for the whole process. So that's what stands behind the Geneva understandings, and obviously we need to go through that. Well, this is very small. However, let me try to tell you the basics and the outlines of the understanding. Number one, it says, it will end the conflict. By the way, which conflict? Israelis and Palestinians? Israelis and the Arab world? Not very clear. But the whole idea in the roadmap, for example, is a roadmap for peace in the Middle East. That means between Israel and all the other Arab nations. The Geneva agreements are not saying that. All right, so this is number one, because I'm going to show you the various fields that we are discussing and try to make my own comments, how we see that over there, what are the main problems. Number one. Number two, we speak about a mutual recognition. That means that the Palestinians give us the right to exist, and we thank them very much, and we give them the right to exist as well. By the way, the whole beginning of the Oslo Accords was an exchange of letters between Arafat and Prime Minister Rabin. And in this exchange of letters, the PLO acknowledged officially Israel as the homeland for the Jewish people, and we gave them the title, so to speak, the autonomy of the PA, the Palestinian autonomy, so to speak. So this recognition was already given. Although today, if you talk to any Palestinian official, they will not deny that, but practically, nothing happens. Officially, the Palestinians, and this is coming out more and more as the whole conflict is turning toward the religious track. It wasn't always on the religious track. It was, but nobody said it loud and clear, right? So now there's a big question, do the Palestinians believe that we have the right to exist? So you have to reconsider and resend such a letter of mutual understanding. Israel is the homeland for the Jewish people, and the future Palestine is the homeland of the Palestinians. Again, I'm not saying right, wrong, bad, good. I'm trying to present the Geneva agreements and what was the idea behind them. I'll give you my opinion in the last 2 minutes if that's okay with you. Thank you. Next thing is about the Palestinian state. It will be demilitarized. It will have a strong militia. They will maintain law and order, but they will not have any armed forces. We are very experienced with Palestinian armed forces. Enough is enough. They won't have that. It will be a demilitarized militia. And then it speaks about a comprehensive solution for the refugees. Friends, it's a human tragedy. The refugees issue should have been solved, I would say, 55 years ago when it started. Not because there was no money for the mission. Not because Israel was not willing. Because of one reason only. These refugees were kept in their miserable condition as a tool used cynically by the Arab regimes to carry on the struggle against Israel. Everybody was willing to assist. In fact, we said, listen, Jews left Arab countries, leaving so much property behind, give it to the refugees. They will live in nicer homes they ever lived in. End of problem. No. And to remind you, 3 years earlier, the Second World War ended with 25 million refugees around Europe. Everybody found its place. Why not in the Middle East? Because they didn't want to solve the problem. It's a real miserable situation for them. And we said, listen, or they said, listen, let's try to find a solution for the refugees. By the way, one of the main issues on the table between Israel and the PA. And speaks about blocks of settlements. I will speak about settlements tomorrow in more details. That since it's land for peace, and Israeli settlements are all over, Judea, Samaria, Gaza, and the Golan, although the Golan is not part of this understanding, it belongs to, or used to be part of Syria, so this is not on the table speaking about that.
Let me help you here.
I'm okay. And I was happy for having big ears. Well, not big enough. Okay, thanks. So, we speak about getting the settlers together into communities, blocks of communities, and then to exchange some land. That was the idea. Jerusalem, a tough issue, a very tough issue. It is indeed a cup of trouble. I'm sorry, what is the exact biblical verse, pastors? A cup of trouble, I'm sorry. And it is a stumbling rock to the whole process. Well, Jerusalem will be divided. There will be the western part of the city, including Jewish neighborhoods. In the eastern part of Jerusalem will be the capital of the state of Israel, and the Arab parts of Jerusalem, including East Jerusalem, excluding the Jewish quarter and the Western Wall. You'll see the map in a minute. They will be called as Al-Quds, that means the Holy One in Arabic, the capital of the Palestinian state. And if that's not enough, then we speak about the commitment of the Palestinians. Oh, we have to say, how funny. I mean, they made this commitment in the Oslo Accords. Very clearly, we are going to fight terror together. It will be a joint venture, and you are committed to a long-going struggle against your own fanatic, Muslim, Shiite, militia groups and terror gangs at whatever. And one of the last parts of it, as you will see, and who will make sure that all of this is happening? A multinational force. Very easy, huh? Let's send the UN in, and they will make sure that everybody happens. We don't have such a good experience with the UN in southern Lebanon, for example, and other places. Just for your information, under a UN camp in October of 2000, 3 Israeli soldiers were not only killed, but the bodies were kidnapped and were returned yesterday, day before yesterday. It was just below a UN camp. And the UN would not even give us the information of what happened. We didn't know if these guys are dead or alive. We had no idea how they were kidnapped. The UN. They're supposed to, to maintain law and order in the area. So we don't trust a multinational force to guard us. We want to do it ourselves. So these are the basic outlines, and we know how to do it. So these are the basic outlines. Let me just show you more or less the border issue. And I know that this is kind of small, but what can we do? And this is a map in Hebrew, so you can all read that very clearly. Basically, it gives you the outlines of the West Bank, not easy to see, Samaria and Judea down here. And since we spoke about exchanging territories, because some settlements, some communities will be kind of get together, so this will be the area that Israel will annex simply because it's overlooking the runways of the airport. We don't want airplanes to go down to the international airport, the only one in Israel, under the threat of missiles from the other side. We have to make sure that our airspace is secured. And then we said that, of course, parts of Jerusalem and around Jerusalem, the metro area, and instead we'll give them some land here and by Gaza. You only see Samaria and Judea in this map. Gaza is further down southwest. So since we now solved the territorial issue, so to speak, we go into the corridor connecting these two places. Well, assuming that they're going to get Samaria, Judea, and Gaza. By the way, all of the Gaza Strip is in Palestinian hands. There are a few Jewish communities in it, and Gaza is surrounded by a fence that was built on the borders of 1967. Guess what? Not a single attack came out of Gaza. Fences are very effective. It's a great way to protect Israeli lives, and we do. When we try to build one in Judea and Samaria for the same purpose exactly, we're being criticized by all the world. You go down to Southern California, there's a fence over there. And I'm not sure when was the last Mexican attack launched on southern USA. Security fence. Well, there is a corridor connecting these two, and the Palestinians could travel freely from one section to the other. It's getting into much more details about how it's supposed to work, etc. But this is basically the idea, connecting between Gaza and Judea and Samaria. It also says that since we paved some big roads and good ones with a lot of good infrastructure, roads that go from Tel Aviv up to Jerusalem, Jerusalem to Tiberias, Jerusalem to Ein Gedi, and many of you know what I'm talking about, they will go through a future Palestinian territory. But we want to have the right to use them as well. All right? So, since we solved the territorial issue so easily, we have to carry on. As we said, it will be a demilitarized zone. However, we have a problem. The problem is the border crossings. According to the security issue, the borders that the Palestinian future state will have with neighboring countries will be monitored by the Palestinians. That's kind of a big joke. Because if you want to keep an area demilitarized, but you're not controlling the entrances to this area from countries that definitely have an interest to instigate one party against the other, what's the point? Theoretically, anybody who wants to carry weapons in from Egypt will do that because the border crossings will be monitored by Palestinians. Oh, and the multinational force, obviously, but we spoke about that already. Same thing with Jordan. Anybody who comes in from Jordan goes through these crossings, he can carry in whatever he wants. And we are experienced. This is not going to happen. Because even today, there are tunnels that go under the border here in the Gaza Strip. And they are smuggling in tons of equipment, sometimes even people, experts of terror coming from Lebanon to Egypt, and are going into the Gaza Strip, coming from these tunnels, which are coming from Egyptian territory. And we have a peace accord with the Egyptians, and whenever we say, listen guys, you go and find the tunnels, blow them up, close them up. Well, you know, blah, blah, blah. So we do that. But it won't happen that these crossings will be open without Israeli monitoring, because we do know what will happen. There will be a free flow of weapons into the territories, and the whole idea of a demilitarized zone, it's not really serious. But, as we said, that's what the Geneva Agreement is saying. Okay, I kind of look at my watch all the time to make sure that... All right, Jerusalem, another tough issue, as you understand. This is the map of Jerusalem, and this one is in English, although it's very little and hard to tell. You see the blue area, or the light blue or gray area, that was Jerusalem prior to 1967. In 1967, after Jerusalem was liberated, and the whole area was liberated by a law that was made not officially, it was kind of an understanding in the Israeli government, the city area or the city metro area extended very significantly. Today it covers a much larger area. We have to be honest by saying that speaking about this place, which is called Shoafat in North Jerusalem, doesn't have any biblical significance. For people to say, listen, Jerusalem is the holy city, it has to stay in Israel because it's a holy city. Well, again, these are the Arab parts of the city. There was a reason for this annexation. And today, this is the new lines of the city of Jerusalem. The Geneva understandings are saying, listen, let's divide the city into two. All the Jewish communities or neighborhoods that were built around the blue triangles will remain in Israeli hands. And the rest of it will go to the Palestinians. The city will be divided just like it was until 1967. West Jerusalem will be the capital of the state of Israel, and East Jerusalem will be the capital of Palestine. That's the idea behind that. But it's not that simple, because Jerusalem is a very tough case and a very complicated issue. Please read that, because I want to go to the map in a minute. Temple Mount. What do we do with Temple Mount? What do we do with the Western Wall? What about the Jewish Quarter? What about access to the biggest Jewish cemetery in the world, Mount of Olives, which happens to be in the eastern part of town? Brutally violated by the Jordanians. They paved roads using the tombstones of Jews that are lying there for centuries to pave the road. But now we have access to it. What about this one? Well, here's the agreement or the understanding. This is the map of Jerusalem in Hebrew again, but some of you may remember that this will be Temple Mount, Muslim Quarter, Christian Quarter, Armenian Quarter, Jewish Quarter. You do see the various colors over there for your benefit. Temple Mount, Muslim, Christian, Armenian, Jewish. Well, the agreements are saying the following. Temple Mount will be in Palestinian hands. It is saying that nobody can conduct any excavations on top of Temple Mount unless both parties agree. It also says everybody will have access to Temple Mount unless it's in the times of the daily prayers of the Muslims. It will be closed on Friday in a way as it is today. Western Wall in Jewish hands. Western Wall tunnel. Some of you have been there. It's a tunnel that goes along the western retaining wall of Temple Mount, way into the Muslim Quarter, but underground, in Israeli hands. What about the exit of the Western Wall tunnel that goes into the Muslim Quarter? Palestinian hands. It's kind of confusing, huh? You really have to be over creative to try to find a solution to such a complicated situation if you're trying. Dung Gate, right here, leads to the Jewish Quarter Western Wall in Israeli hands. Zion Gate, over here, Israeli hands. Jaffa Gate, the most important one in the old city, will be controlled, kind of together. It will be a joint control by Israelis and Palestinians. Israeli police officers can only walk along the blue path, that's it. Palestinian police officers can only go along the yellow lines. Just let's cut a very long story to the bottom line about Jerusalem. But again, that's the understanding, and somehow it's supposed to work. Into the most tough issue, basically, the refugees. As I said earlier, basically, it's a really human tragedy. These people living in horrible conditions, they are the citizens of no country. You need to understand that. In 1948, when the State of Israel was born, and the refugee problem was in a way created, it was an incredible story. Why would anybody become a refugee? Why to leave a perfectly well-built home and wander to other countries? Well, I can think about a few scenarios here. Number one, the enemy came and conquered your town, and you have to flee. Or maybe you heard some rumors about the mighty enemy approaching, and you're leaving. In the case of the Palestinians, as amazing as it may sound, there was another reason. An official invitation granted by the Arab countries around Israel saying, listen, when the British mandate is leaving, and that was the case, and if the Jews dare to declare their independence, then the mighty Arab armies will invade this country and will throw the Jews into the ocean. It's always throwing us into the ocean. If they were kind enough to throw us into the Dead Sea, you can float, nobody sinks in the Dead Sea. No, it's always the ocean. That was the whole idea. But they said, since the Arab armies are coming, you, our friends and brothers, may be in danger. Clear the way, and after we deal with the Jewish state, you can take their homes. Statistically, about 70% of these refugees fled from them towns without even seeing an Israeli soldier. That was the invitation. Most of these are not coming back, obviously. But many stayed in Israel. They are citizens of the state of Israel. Sometimes not perfectly well treated, I agree. My country is a democracy. And they live in a democracy. The only Arabs in the Middle East that really enjoy the benefits of democracy are Arabs who live in Israel, not in Egypt, not in Jordan, not in Syria. So these people that were invited created an enormous problem. Number one, because they're not coming back. But number two, it was the UN's decision. UNRWA, the United Nations Refugee and Relief and Welfare Agency, was founded to deal with this issue. And when you read the documents of the UN, when these were founded, you're really surprised. What they say basically is this: whenever we try to have a count of how many refugees are there, we can't. They won't let us. We don't know how many people exist or are worthy of the status of refugees. What do? Who is a refugee? Well, UNRWA made a law. Anybody who lived over 2 years in Palestine has the right to be called as a refugee. 2 years. But when these agencies went into the refugee camps, bringing education with them, and food with them, and decent so-called housing, what happened was quite amazing. Arabs, natives of Syria and Lebanon and Jordan, that lived in much harsher conditions, took an advantage of the UN helping out refugees and moved into the camps to enjoy the support. When you read the documents, and we don't have the time here, but, well, there's a table outside with a book on it, all right? It has some information about that as well. They are frustrated because the director of UNRWA says, we can't count these people. Somebody comes in once, and he gets this document or kind of a certificate, and then he comes in again dressed as a woman, and he comes back the third time with short pants, and the fourth time with a beard, because it meant food. It meant education. And we speak about people that lived in horrible conditions, natives to these lands. Why not take the advantage of the generosity of the UN? So how many refugees are there? Impossible to tell. The numbers are moving from 6 to 8 million. I'm telling you that simply by birth, it's impossible. 600,000 people about left, and now there are 12 times more. That's a world record, impossible. But officially, non-officially, these are the numbers that officially nobody will dare to say how many are there. And these understandings are saying, let's solve the problem once and for all. In what way? Well, very simple. A refugee can choose what he wants to do. He can decide to live where he lives today. He can decide to go to the new Palestinian state. And if Israel is willing, we can absorb as many as we want. It's Israel's decision. You know what? We have absorbed about 200,000 people already today, because the borders were open until recently when the security fence is being built, and there was a constant infiltration of Palestinians coming from Judea and Samaria to work in Israel and to stay with the families which are proper Israelis. So the right of return, it happens every day, not officially, because these people keep coming. So we don't need to make such decisions for that to happen. It happens. And the estimate is not officially about 200,000 of these refugees are already in Israel proper, joining some friends and some people that came from the same village in Israel proper. But it says something more which is really frustrating. You see, you have the Palestinian refugee camp and a Jewish one. What is really frustrating is this one. What about Jewish refugees? You see, everything is based on a resolution made by the UN, 194, that says basically that we need to solve the refugee issue in the Middle East. It doesn't say Arab refugees, it speaks about refugees. How interesting that following the 1948 war, 700,000 Jews fled from Arab countries, as we always did for 2,000 years, but now there was a place to go. We had a home, State of Israel. And these people left behind property, real estate, with the asset of $12 billion. How come the world is only discussing the issue of compensation for Palestinian refugees when Resolution 9194 doesn't mention that? It only speaks about refugees. So usually, if I just throw at you refugees and you don't know much about the situation, you would assume, must be Palestinians? No. Jews as well, actually more than Palestinians. So this is totally ignored by the Geneva understandings, but more than that, who is responsible to the whole situation? We are. Israel is supposed to admit, so to speak, or to take responsibility over the refugee problem. It was our fault. We've been attacked, we won the war, and it's all our fault, as it always is. This is very Jewish, to take all the blame on your narrow shoulders, always. We are very good at doing that. But this time it has some financial aspects, because we are supposed to compensate the countries that hosted the refugees. Do you know how these guys are treated in Syria? We're supposed to pay the Syrians compensation for hosting the refugees? That's bizarre. But that's the idea. So you see, it's so easy to solve all the problems in the world. We just did. Well, why this is not going to work, and I have another 4 minutes. Well, very clearly. Number one, everything that happens now is supposed to be a lesson that was learned from the last 3 years of violence in Israel. Was it really learned? The lesson that we are supposed to learn, the Israelis, is that our military might has limits. Make no mistakes, it's not about who's stronger. We are much stronger. But we will not go in to wipe out a refugee camp, even if it means we are going to lose some soldiers in such a battle, like in Jenin. The world was upset about Jenin. Maybe some of you remember the name. 5,000 Palestinians massacred by the Israelis. Oops, sorry, 3,000. Oops, sorry, 100. When they were counting, 58. And 24 Israelis. We've learned our lesson. And the lesson is that we don't want to cause death among innocent civilians, and we are limited. As strong as Israel is, we are Jews, and we have our moral values. And we are not killing innocent people. If you want to keep that as a foundation for your life, you have a problem in implementing your military strength among civilians. It's not working. Did they learn the lesson? They had the lesson to learn as well, which is very simple. Israel is willing to negotiate, and if you hope that by using terror you can accomplish more, you're wrong. And for the first time in many years, this country understands it as well. In fact, the world understands it. The message is very clear. By using terror, you'll accomplish zero. Did they learn the lesson? Otherwise, there is nothing to talk about. Well, right now, most of the influence in the Palestinian society is Hamas, Islamic Jihad. And they, by definition, are committed to a total destruction of the state of Israel. So the lesson was not learned. As I told you from the beginning, it's not going to work. Number two, let's say that they want to. Are they capable? We still consider Arafat, well, we don't talk to him, but he is over there. Is anybody in the Palestinian side can deliver such an agreement? I'm telling you, no way, impossible. We said a couple of times that we are willing to evacuate places which the Israeli army is deployed in today if we know for sure that somebody is taking responsibility to stop terror, so they won't come after us. Nobody in the Palestinian side is willing to take such responsibility. So leaving for what? For keeping the same situation? No. Are they capable? No one knows for sure. No one knows how much control Arafat has, how strong are the Hamas. The fact is that when they want to find an agreement, they have to go to Cairo to negotiate. Maybe the Egyptians will help. Even Arafat doesn't know what goes in Arafat's mind. The last, not the last, but some of the others, well, as I said, can we trust the multinational force? Our experience from Lebanon is no. Why would anybody risk his lives? And sometimes these guys have to protect the Jewish country. Never happened in the past, by the way. Why would it happen now? And the last few. Well, isn't that a key question? We've been there. We've done that in Oslo. And what if it's not working? What are the sanctions? What are we going to do? Are we free to implement reciprocity in the following way? If they don't keep their side, we are not committed to keep our side? Well, the Geneva understandings are not mentioning much about what happens if it's not working. But it didn't work so far. And if the lesson was not learned, why will it work in the future? It won't. Yeah, well, actually, it's the same question. Why trusting them now? I mean, we took an enormous risk to start the whole process. We did. We didn't have to. It didn't work. So can we really trust that to happen? Well, as I said, I'm only bringing in the Geneva understandings, the way they were presented, the way it was supposed to start. Here's the rose, some kind of negotiations, a platform of understanding, whatever. But this is the message that I'm afraid that many of you will not like. If such a plan, more or less, was brought by the cabinet officially and was presented to the people, it had good chances to be the official plan. It did. Right now, in the country, it won't happen because of the political structure. But every poll that you're taking in Israel, I don't like it, many others don't like it. People are willing to take risks, and enormous risks. That's how much you want peace. Are we out of our minds? Yes. Do we want to commit suicide? No. But you need to understand the dilemma. You need to understand where we are standing in a constant struggle. I don't want to send my kids to school and be dead worried about them coming back from school. What could be more trivial than that? And that's people's tendency, basically. We need to try again and again and again. But it takes two to tango, right? You need to have somebody on the other side to work with. And right now, nobody. If you come back tomorrow to listen to my speech about the settlements, just try to focus on some other aspects, and maybe you'll get the fullness of the picture. Bottom line, God is good. That's the bottom line. I know it looks really kind of a desperate situation. It's not. Life goes on. People wake up every morning, they even smile, they go to work, they go to school. Life goes on. But the issues that we have to deal with are so profound, and the dangers are so enormously big. But we are willing, because whenever anybody initiated anything in the Middle East, speaking about peace, it was always the state of Israel. Always. Now it's America for the first time. Will it work? Well, we know the end of the story, right? We just don't know when. That's the missing factor, when this is going to happen. Thank you so much for listening.